welcome to NUFC Talk TV Tactical Analysis with myself, Gary, the Geordie Yam Yam. We're going to have a quick look at Sunday's game against Nottingham Forest. Well, for the first 50 minutes, I was on the edge of my seat, jumping with joy, and for the 40 minutes post that, I got my head in my hands, wanting the final whistle or praying for the final whistle. So it's the highs and lows of Newcastle United, as it's been for most of the season so far. I think we saw the good and the bad, but obviously before we get into all that, let's just do the usual. Please hit the likes button if you enjoy the show. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy what you see and the content that we bring. Hit that bell for future content. We do lots of videos throughout the week, so if you hit the bell, you'll get notifications when we are posting a video. We're 9 times out of 10 we do live comments on the show, so please feel free to come along and join us. You can become a member if you want to as well, for a small monthly fee, and obviously you can become you can have a look at our webpage, nufctalk.tv, for all up-to-date content. So without further ado, where do we start? Well, I suppose what we can do is start with the lineups. Bit of a strange one, if you like, because obviously we never anticipated Tonali not being involved in this game. And obviously then we had Nick Pope in goal, and Dubravka had been dropped. Bit of a surprise to everybody, if I'm honest, especially myself, up in the northeast on Sunday, watching the game. And I can only, well, for me, I haven't really an answer for the reason why Dubs got dropped. He certainly wasn't to blame for any of the issues against Man City. I think it was he wasn't at fault for really any of the goals. I think the whole team in front of him just didn't protect him enough. So for me, it was a bit of a shocker. And yes, I definitely wanted Miley in. I think Miley deserved a run, but again, the Tonali injury came at the 11th hour. There was a lot of discussions and a lot of debating going on about Tonali in social media, whether he was going to start or whether he wasn't. A lot of people were being shouted out because of ITKs and things like that. But obviously it came that he wasn't fit enough to start, and he was on the bench nursing, I believe, some muscle soreness. So the starting lineup was Nick Pope in goal, Tino Livramento right back, Fabian Schär and Dan Burn centre backs, with Louis Saul at left back. Going into midfield, we've got Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Willock and Lewis Miley. Out on the left is Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy on the right, with Alexander Isak up front. Going on to Notts Forest, we had Matt Sells, Nico Williams as their left back, Murillo, Milenkovic centre backs, Aina at right back, Dominguez and Anderson in the deep defensive midfield. Gibbs White up at the number 10, or more of an attacking midfielder. And then you've got Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left side, Ilanga on the right-hand side, with Chris Wood as the main striker. Nothing really challenged for me. That was probably the side, and I think that was the side that Victor put out, who was the lad, the Nottingham Forest fan, who came on the show and predicted exactly the lineup. And for us, like I've already mentioned, a couple of interests, because obviously Nick Pope had come in for Dubravka, and obviously we'd got Lewis Miley come in for Tonali. So again, nothing expected. For me, it was going to be a very tight game. What type of Forest turn up, what type of Newcastle turn up, and I think that was the question on everybody's mind. So for me, the one thing that I actually love when you actually see and play against Nottingham Forest is they play with very, very much an attacking frame of mind. They've play with this high line of 4 with Morgan Gibbs-White pushing on to create that extra attacker. They have the width with Ilanga and Hudson-Odoi, But once that ball breaks through into the centre of the park, which it did a number of times, we were able to capitalise and overload this part of the park. Mainly 3-on-2. Sometimes it was 4-on-3 in other times. But every time we got the ball into Bruno, somewhere in the middle of the park, he got loads of room to turn and push that ball on and progress the ball forward with the overload from both Louis Hall at times, Willock, and obviously you've got Anthony Gordon, who would sometimes as well come inside and create that narrow three to stop Nottingham Forest actually playing through us. And a lot of the time, Nottingham Forest ended up just literally clearing the lines, trying to hit the big men up front. And again, it wasn't really working for them. Like I say, for the first half, really, we dominated the ball, dominated possession through the lines, and we concentrated mainly to isolate Aina on the right back position with our left-sided players, and it worked really well. Obviously, that was until they scored, but we'll come on to that in a second. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of players while we've got that on board. You've got, as you can see here, I've highlighted both Louis Hall and Willock on that left-hand side, and you can see Anthony Gordon's run. Let's put that into the 3D effect. And you can see it. So I wanted a massive shout out for these two because I thought, to me, Willock for me was man of the match. Again, there's certain areas that he could be better, but for me, he's running down that left-hand channel alongside Louis Hall. Really stretched Nottingham Forest. And another shout out was to Louis Smiley because I thought Louis Smiley actually had an amazing game. And I just think, for a young lad who's, coming back into the side, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, thought he played absolutely amazing. Played deep at times with Bruno to allow Willock to go forward, got into the box as often as he can, supported the front line. He to me was one of those players that was one of the highlights. There was 3 for me yesterday, even though there was lots of players that was individual at times. The ones that were consistent for me was, like I say, Louis Hall, Louis Smiley, and man of the match for me was Joe Willock. Really good play from these guys. And again, I've highlighted on here how we isolated that left-hand channel and tried to overload all the time with Aina on 2-on-1s. It was pulling lots of players out of position to try and cover. And like I say, it was playing these 4 up front. Now, in the past, we have been found out when we've lost the ball in the final third. It was the ball over the top where we were isolating players and they were having to break on us. We saw that last year when Chris Wood went and got a hat-trick. It was just one ball over the top and they dominated. Didn't have that joy in the first half, in the first 50 minutes. It was literally all Newcastle. But they did eventually get the breakaway, and it was quite a strange, I wouldn't say counter-attack. It was, I suppose, Murphy could be at fault. For me, there was a number of issues, and I'm going to come, like I say, mainly onto that in a second. But if I go to the 3D here, and I've actually highlighted both Nick Pope and Dan Burns here, because from this position here, you wouldn't expect Hudson-Odoi to actually get a shot at goal. But he does. He manages to get a shot and squeezes it into this near post. And for me, Nick Pope was too far to the left. Again, I don't know whether he'd stepped across to try and get to see the ball because of Dan Burns' positioning. There's a point where Dan Burn, if he'd have just stood where he was, he would have blocked the shot anyway, but he doesn't. Like all defenders, they will try and look at the way the player looks to shake the ball to the far post. And I think, again, it was an anticipation from both Nick Pope to cover his far post, knowing Dan Burn was blocking that near post. But as soon as Dan Burn does his little shape to go outside, or inside, it just leaves a nice little gap for Hudson-Odoi to tuck it away into the corner. But again, it's a shot from 25 yards, 25, 30 yards with very little, there's no real pace on the ball. It's just shaped away from the keeper. But like I say, Nick Pope, unfortunately, giving himself too much to do to try and dive and cover that position. So a little bit disappointing for me, if I'm honest, with that first initial goal to concede, because it was totally against the run of play, but it was more the fact that you had you had lots of players to to stop it from happening. If you hadn't have allowed Hudson-Odoi to win the ball back from Murphy, and again, there's going to be a lot of people that will blame Murphy for what happened, and it was a strange one when you come to think about it, because we've got players within this squad that are individually brilliant, but sometimes can just switch off. And I'm going to go on to another screen, because for me this one is the one where I want to talk about, because there's the number of things that happen at the start of their goal, Nottingham Forest's first goal. So I'm going to go on to the first slide, and as you can see here, I've highlighted, you've got Tino with the ball with the throw in. What you've got down this corner here, you can't see, he's out of the picture, is Fabian Schär. He could have thrown to. You've got Chris Woods, who's obviously supporting to try and block both Dan Burn, who was square here, and obviously to try and cut out if Tino decides to throw in. But what you get here is exactly what you expect from a defending coach, the way Murphy runs inside. What I expected from one of these two, though, Bruno and Lewis Miley, is to step out into the channel. Because as you can see from the Forest players, they've all stood in front of the players, and it's only Murphy who decides to make this little inside run. And obviously, unfortunately, he tries to check the ball back towards Tino. Hudson-Odoi robs him of that ball, which leads on to his strike at goal. And as you can see, by which time we're all out of shape. And this is what I was saying about Dan Burn. Dan Burn's body shape. If he'd have stood up, he would have blocked the shot. Palpy had moved to the left-hand side so he can see where the ball was going. But unfortunately, like I say, when you leave yourself with 3/4 of the goal open, you're not going to reach that ball in the corner. So for me, there was a number of faults, not just on Murphy, but obviously it was Murphy who was trying to do a dodgy ball, and I'm going to put it as that because he's trying to play the ball back with a player on his, close up to the back of him. So he could have passed that into Dan Burn, who was open. He could have passed it out to Fabian Schär, who was open, and then they could have literally pushed the ball forward again and progressed the ball forward. And that to me is, like I said, sometimes it's just the simplest mistakes that can create an opportunity for the opposition, to which Hudson-Odoi duly took. But again, for me, it was a goal or a mistake that should never have led to a goal. There was still a lot for him to do in this position to try and tuck that ball into that corner. And where I was seated was at the Gallagher end, literally in line with the posts, and I could see the amount of goal that was gaping at that time. And when it went in, I just shook my head, and I said to the gentleman to the side of me, how has that gone in? I mean, again, I've watched it multiple times, and there were several players at fault for me during that build up. So not just Jacob Murphy's problem, but he was the main instigator. But like I say, I think there was other issues. And I'll go on to this slide because, again, this is the high line from Nottingham Forest, as I said. And every time we broke the ball through and progressed the ball into the midfield, A lot of the time we had 3-on-2, sometimes 4-on-2, 4-on-3, and it was just so easy to play through. Quite a lazy front line, if I'm honest with you. The only person that seemed to be working in this front four was Chris Wood. I thought he, tried to lead the line, but both Elanga and Gibbs White for me were very poor, especially on the defensive runs and things like that to try and support. Very weak indeed. So again, this is the area that we seem to dominate in the first 40 to 50 minutes. Passing the ball straight through the lines with no pressure whatsoever once we'd got them turned. Again, you look at when we didn't go down the left-hand side, you look at this, and again, great ball from Murphy down the wing. He could have passed it inside to Bruno. And again, you look at the space between the players here, the passing lanes, could have quite easily pushed it in to Miley, who had got room, and then you've got Isaac and Willock that could have been in space into here if the ball had been played through there. But what we decided to do is go down the line. They've got Tino Livramento playing literally as our highest player against quite a flat back four. Again, isolating certain individuals. Murillo has to then try and cover because obviously you've got Nico Williams here just watching the ball and doesn't realise that Tino's going to run in behind him. Unfortunately, it comes to nothing in the end. But again, it just shows the difference when you've got runners coming from deep, and both Tino playing on this inside right position, both Lewis Hall again playing on this inside left, but more on the outside left. On the other side, both fullbacks really taking the control and progressing the ball really well up the park. And again, this is just another screenshot showing you how we isolate Aina. Putting Elanga on his bum. We've got 2-on-1 situation again, and you've got your back line. Anthony Gordon obviously making that forward run, but again, just highlighting, players now willing to get into the box. This is Tino that I'm circulating here. You've got your two midfield lads supporting Louis Smiley, and you've got Isaac running again to make it 3-on-2 in this corner. And again, what happens here is the ball goes down the line to Willock, brings the ball back, and again another chance goes begging, but we do get a foul to where the goal comes from. And again, this is from that foul. The ball is, and again, I have to look at the marking, right? So for me, the one thing that Nottingham Forest did, and we were culpable in the second half as bad, but the first half, the Nottingham Forest marking was absolutely appalling. What you've got in the box is virtually man on man. Free header at the back post. He then circulates it to the far post for Isaac to get involved with. Isaac then brings Willock in. The ball comes out. And then out to Lewis Hall, who fires the ball back in to Lewis Miley, who's got 5 yards, the closest person to him, 5 yards. He's got time to bring the ball in control with his right foot, falls onto his left foot, and then drills a low shot between two pairs of legs and beats Sells into this far corner here. Again, it's just sloppy marking, sloppy defending. He could have easily just fed in Isaac, who was literally, as you can see by the shape of his body, wanting that ball into there. He would have had a shot at goal. But again, Lewis Miley, hats off to your son, because like I say, on his left foot, keeps the ball low, keeps the ball under control, and guides it between lots of bodies into the far corner. Moving on to the next slide, and again, this is how well we dominated, because we only allowed, after their initial goal, one other shot at Popey, and it again come from Hudson-Odoi. And I just wanted to put this up because it shows you the shape. We've gone literally man for man at the top, because again, they like to dominate. But what you've got here is Milenkovic literally getting forward, their centre-back, because you'd got Gibbs White, who would come deep trying to move our players out of position. So Milenkovic took over in that position. And then if you go on to the next one, as you can see, all our bodies are in a good shape. You've got Murphy now running back to try and support Anderson, because Anderson had made a run from deep. So he'd seen that and he checks that off. Hudson-Odoi decides not to give the ball to Anderson, and he could have just fed him into here. But then you've got the likes of Tino, who was just going to run out and obviously try and narrow that space down. But the one thing that concerned me when I looked at this position is what appeared more and more as the game went on, and that was the space. Fabian Shaw and Gibbs White in the box here. Even though they've gone man to man, you can see everybody touch tight. There's Dan Byrne literally touching Chris Woods. Alanga at the back post with Lewis Hall. There's lots of questions for me when it comes to this positioning. And I think that, if Hudson-Odoi had decided to get it out of his feet and move that ball quickly into Gibbs White, there was a chance of a shot on target quite comfortably. But like I say, that starts to show its ugly head a little bit further in the analysis. Going on to the next one. Again, this is this overload down this left-hand side. First off, it was so dominant every time we passed Elanga and that first with that first instant shot. Pass. And this was all from Popey. The one thing I must say and give Pope praise for yesterday, even though I don't think he deserves a lot of praise, was his distribution from his hands. Wasn't from his kicking, but from his hands. There was lots of good movement from both Lewis Hall down into that left-back channel, just arcing his run in front of Elanga, and Popey found him 90% of the time. And again, you've got that isolation, lots of grass to run into. Aina following Anthony Gordon deep, which allows everybody then to run into the space. Again, you've got your midfield three here, all in a line, supporting the space. And again, for me, Anderson worked his socks off yesterday for Forest. And as you can see, everybody's on the retreat to try and get back into some shape. Going up again, it was a simple ball into Anthony Gordon. What Lewis Hall didn't do, he stopped his run. He carried on running, but then everybody else is literally facing the ball. Aina goes in for the challenge. Elanga stops, doesn't track Lewis Hall, so it's a lovely ball up the line to for Lewis Hall to run onto. What you get then is Isak running the line really well, bringing Milenkovic out and creating this space between himself and Murillo for both Hall and Willock to exploit. Going on from that one, you go in, Lewis Hall then gets that deflection, a couple of deflections, and the ball falls lovely towards Murphy. Again, it's that commitment to the cause to get into the back stick. And at first I thought he was going to handball it because of the way the ball and his body shape was. And it looked to all the world that he was going to get his hand to that. But luckily it comes off his thigh as he slides in and goes into the side netting to make it 2-1. And again, well-deserved, if you like, because like I say, apart from that crazy goal that was gifted to them, we had dominated play, literally play after play down that left-hand channel. And when we switched it, we'd got an opportunity down the right-hand channel. But again, it's making them overloads onto that left-hand side, which is just drawing players across, and it just leaves space. And again, you've only got to look at the likes of the amount of space that Lewis Miley has coming onto the edge of the box there, totally uncontested. If the ball had been deflected in and around the penalty spots, Lewis Miley would have virtually an open goal. But again, you've got to give praise where praise is due. And like I say, Murphy did the run and gets in. And again, this is another distribution from Pope. And again, as you can see, what you've got now is Chris Wood now making a run. Anthony Gordon's coming on the inside, bringing Aina with him. So again, lots of movement that people often don't give credit for. and unless you've got movement from players, Willock cracking run down the line, Gordon coming inside. You've got your runners then from deep, which is your Isaac, going on to that next frame. Again, Willock has the legs on Wood, but Wood's still chasing him back. You've got your back two centre halves here with Milenkovic and Murillo. One has to make his mind up what he's going to do. Willock carries on his run and feeds a lovely ball in to Isaac, who again, some people will say a lucky deflection, which lifts the ball up over Sells into the back of the net to make it 3-1. And again, people will say, and I think that was Isaac's 50th goal in the Premier League. Again, people will say, 2 lucky deflections, but you have to make your luck. And again, what I like to see is you've got players, if you look at the amount of players that are trying to get in and support the box to try and get that deflection. And again, that's why I like Willock, because he's full of that forward run. Sometimes he's very lack in defensive run, very similar to the way Nottingham Forest played. Their front three didn't really want to get back, didn't really want to challenge. And like I said, there's Chris Wood, the man who's their forward line, getting back into his own box to try and support the team. Again, to no avail. Going on again, this is the start of the second half. And this is where, literally it could have been 5-1. Again, you look at Elliot Anderson, just allowing Fabian Schär to run off him. Everybody looks in a good position, marking along the 6-yard line. But again, Fabian Schär just gets his head to it, and it comes off the post and then out for another corner, which we don't get anything from. But again, it's just lazy. It's lazy defending. And like I say, that could have been the finish for me for Nottingham Forest. But unfortunately, in the 50th minute when this happened, where we started that second half, where we finished the first half, and it looked like it could have been a score of 6, 7 or 8, roles turned. And we started then to be a little bit lazy, a little bit more standoffish, stood a bit deeper in our own half, allowed Nottingham Forest to gain that momentum. And obviously with the ball in the air, which is always going to be, for us, the danger, if you like, it started to become evident that their one goal could lead to another goal, and the pressure would really be on. So again, you look at standard corner, you look at all our defensive positions here. You've got 3 bodies coming to the front post. Elliot Anderson gets the ball in. You've got Tino and Murphy at the front post. Nobody's really marking any of these guys. You look at the back stick here, and you've got your extra body of Lewis Hall on the back stick. Dan Burn is going to pick up, looks like, Chris Wood, sorry. You've got Murillo centre, and then you've got Milenkovic in the middle, which looks like it's Fabian Schär's player. You've got, I think that is Jacob. Sorry, that's Jacob Willock. That's not Murphy. It's Willock or Isaac. I was just looking at the boots, the white boots, and I got confused. Then you've got Willock in the middle with Murillo, and we'll just pass that on to the next phase. And then, as you can see, you've got Milenkovic that just makes a little run in between the 2 guys. Schär busy watching the ball. The ball's headed on. Little flick on at the front post again. Not enough bodies in front of the players for me. But again, you look at the marking. Look at the distance that we're off the players. So Milenkovic has just been allowed to run into the 6-yard box. Chris Woods, there's a gap between him and Dan Burn. Murillo, there's a gap between him and Willock. And like I say, Fabian Schär is just literally watching the ball. Onto the next phase. And again, it's just a little instep volley into a danger area. Chris Woods can't do a lot more with it. And as you can see, by the posture of Pope. He's on his heels. He's not on his toes. Stepping backwards. You look at the distance now between Fabian Schär and Milenkovic, whose body it was to mark. The closest person to him is Miley, who would run from the front stick, and he'd covered that distance, and Fabian Schär couldn't cover that distance. And it was a simple instep volley in the end. That got, well, it wasn't. It was actually outside of his foot that he just literally dragged in. There was no pace on the ball whatsoever. Like I say, Nick Pope was off balance. He was on his heels, couldn't make the dive. So again, really poor goal to give away. But that gave Nottingham Forest the momentum, the drive, and the willingness to keep going. And like I said, go on to the next slide. And what you can see here, and the reasons why I've highlighted this was because of the Milenkovic saga, if you like. Chris Wood hadn't really had a lot of a chance throughout the game. So what you've got now is Dan Burn sitting on Milenkovic and Fabian Schär now on Chris Wood. Yates's come on as a substitute, and we all know what Yatesy gives Nottingham Forest, that little bit of a bite and that niggle. Everything looks absolutely fine here with no issues. And again, the ball goes out. And this, for me, was where you started to see massive cracks. You've got Murillo. I don't know who he was dancing with, on the 35-yard marker here. You've got Isak thinking that these two have collided with each other. The ball's going to come out, and I've got a clear run on towards goal. You've got Gordon that was literally coming out again, expecting Isak to pick the ball up, and then you've got Bruno just running in behind. So the first one is Isak runs past the ball because obviously he didn't even challenge. Anthony Gordon's momentum means that he's got no idea that he needs to now try and get back into a position. And then you've got Bruno just coming up in the back of that to try and get a challenge in. Again, very weak challenge, nothing of any grit. And Murillo was just able to turn inside and out. And with just two movements of the ball, he's past three black and white shirts. Going on to that next one, plays the ball out to Aina. Again, you look at the overload now with Lewis Hall isolated with 2-on-1. Everybody now trying to get back into a position and into shape. And if you have a look across the back line here, we've got more blue shirts than we have black and white shirts. Because again, it's that mental issue when the ball goes out into that area and you've got three black and white shirts running onto it. Everybody's anticipating to push and either create the offside situation or win the ball back and go on the press. But again, what you get here is, like I say, a lot of blue shirts to not many black and white shirts at the back stick, totally overloaded at the near post, totally overloaded at the back post. Going on to the next one, next frame. And again, the Fabian Schär, just go back onto that one. And as you can see here in the middle, you've got Fabian Schär and Milenkovic having a bit of a tussle. He's got his arms around him. So again, he's picked up Milenkovic. Going on back and look at the distance between Fabian Schär and Milenkovic when he finally gets his head on it. And that to me is where we go wrong. In nearly all our games defensively, we are very standoffish rather than attacking the ball. And it's criminal, if I'm honest. Dan Burn, like I say, there's Chris Wood. If Dan Burn was supposed to be picking up Chris Wood at the back stick, he's out of position now. You've got Yatesy, who was running in on the back stick, lost to Gnarly. He's free if the ball had have been on target. Luckily, this had just gone wide of the post. But if this had gone in or it had been saved, you'd got Yatesy in with the tap in at the back stick. Everybody was totally out of position because of just trying to win the ball back or anticipating the ball was going to be won back. And Murillo then takes out three players and then everybody just gets overloaded in certain pockets of space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue shirts to 1, 2, 3, I can class Dan Harvey Barnes involved in that one, but 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, the overload is there on the back stick, and we were creating our own problems. That was the crux of it. It wasn't the fact that Nottingham Forest were doing anything special. They wasn't. We just literally dropped off edge of the box most of the time, deep into our box at the best of times, and allowed Nottingham Forest just to put balls into the box. And when you're off by 2 or 3 yards like we are, allowing players to get free headers, you are going to get punished. Going on to the next slide, again, this is the build up to the corner. Again, you can see the ball come out. We've overloaded onto the right-hand side now in our right-back position. You've got your 3 players here with 4 black and white defenders. Tonali trying to get close. Tino, Lewis Hall, all trying to get close. And Harvey Barnes. You've got your line of 4 players in the box. Again, if you look, don't know who Anthony Gordon's picking up here. And you look at the back stick here, you've got player completely and utterly free. So again, it's all about communication. It's all about giving players a shout of, I need you back. I need you in this position. You've got Dan Byrne and Fabian Shaw, and then you've got poor old Lewis Hall on Chris Wood. Not a matchup that you'd want, but again, luckily for us, he plays the ball in too deep, and Nick Pope manages just to tip it over the bar for a corner. But it's from the corner that they go on and sneak a goal. And again, this annoys me. It annoys me to a point where I look at like individuals about what could you have done better. And I'm up there. That is me there on the, like I say, just in the Gallagher on the lower tier. And I've got a really good view of what's going on. You've got a run to the front post. You've got loads of bodies in and around the front post. Harvey Barnes is stood here, and all you're expecting him to do is head the ball back the way it's come for another corner, head the ball this way for a throw-in. What you don't want him to do is head the ball here, which is exactly what he does, and it allows Gibbs White just to push that ball in towards the goal where Yates gets it. But let's move on to the next slide. And again, so this is Gibbs White having the shot. Fabian Shaw has pulled away from Chris Wood to try and block the shot, which he does, which I believe would have probably gone in anyway, because again, Popey just didn't look as though he'd planted his feet at all during the game. The ball then pops up to Yates, who has the easy task then just to put it into the bottom corner. So again, for me, it was more the fact a game of certainly 2 halves, and it was a game of mirrors in my eyes, because what Nottingham Forest failed to do in the first half, which was defend really well, they really tried to push on with the 4 boys at the top, hoping they were going to win the ball back and launch the ball forward for the counter-attack. It didn't work for them. We played really well. We played through the lines. We overloaded in pockets. And like I say, Lewis Hall and Joe Willock for me down that left-hand side. The running of Anthony Gordon, again, people won't see that. But for me, that was part of the plan and real good key to how we progressed the ball down that left-hand channel. Lewis Miley coming in for the first time in a long while, and again, proving his worth. Didn't really put a foot wrong. Contributed in a goal, contributed in midfield, looked really cool on the ball without any pressure on him. But we've just got to be better at marking. I just think sometimes we switch off in the defensive third, and the biggest culprit for a lot of it is Fabian Shaw, unfortunately. We've got to get tighter. We've got to start, instead of allowing bodies to be goal side of us at set pieces, we've got to get touch tight. And again, that for me was like I say, if Yatesy hadn't have scored, Chris Wood could have scored. There was a number of bodies that could have put that ball into the box. But luckily, it came in the 90th minute. and they hadn't got time to get an equaliser. But like I said, if Murillo's header had have gone in the chance before, then who knows? They may have had time then to go on and collect a point. Was it deserved by them? Well, no, it wasn't. But at the end of the day, you do take your chances. And like I say, on the day we did. A lot of discussion about Isak's penalty and how nonchalant he took it, and was it a wise decision? Well, at the end of the day, it was, like I say, his 51st goal. So it doesn't matter, does it? It went into the back of the net by hook or by crook. And we came out 4-3 winners. And I suppose all that you can take from it is the 3 points. But Eddie Howe's got a real task on his hands now, because on Wednesday night we go to Liverpool. And if the defence plays like it did today, stand off and don't get touch tight, then it could be a few goals against. So thanks to everybody that's watched. Like I say, please, 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 hope you've enjoyed the show. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Like I say, it just helps us as a channel to go on to other supporters. Again, I will see you in the next one after the Liverpool game. Ta-ra for now.